You're listening to Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. And welcome back to the program. And we have two lines that are busy here, so I'm going to try to guess the right one. And I believe, okay, let's try this one. I didn't get it on the first one. Let's try the second one. And I do believe on this line we should have Dr. Taylor Haynes. Good morning.
Well, good morning, John.
And I'm glad you're able to join us this morning, and thanks for holding through the top of the hour break. So how's the campaign coming along?
Very well, very well. Really seeing all of the state and meeting very many interested, patriotic people.
Well, I will say I was on vacation a couple weeks ago, and I got to drive through a wide portion of the state, and I did see a lot of yard signs out.
Yes, we have a tremendous committee. They're really working hard statewide, and we've got a lot of volunteers that spring up in every community we go to. So it's been a very encouraging campaign. The Lord's working with us.
Well, and I will say we had pretty good response from the last time you were on the program as well. For those that might have missed the first time you were on the program, though, just tell us a little bit about what you're about and what your campaign is all about.
Well, really, it's pretty simple. I'm all about restoring the Constitution to Wyoming, putting us on a constitutional form of government. And what that will do, the offshoot or the watershed effect of that is this. It will free up our natural resource producers from agriculture to mining to produce the resource, and that will then just fire our economy in ways that our people aren't used to seeing. We are far wealthier than any other state. We're much wealthier than North Dakota, and when we remove ridiculous regulations, get the EPA out of Wyoming, then the natural resource producers can produce. And they can do other things that we haven't seen done much. For instance, we've got that beautiful dry fork plant up in the Powder River Basin. We can have more power plants in our state, more high-paying jobs. We can have liquefied natural gas. So my campaign is all about restoring the Constitution, which will restore our economy and restore our natural resource base and set Wyoming free.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned the dry fork plant here in Gillette. How would you, as governor, deal with the EPA in a situation like that? Because I mean, we've all seen the stories. The EPA is going all out to try to shut down all of these plants.
Well, the EPA has no constitutional authority to act, and there's no point in running back to court. I mean, since 1845, there's Supreme Court opinions, and the Supreme Court gives you an opinion. They don't make law that say that the Constitution is correct. The EPA has no authority as a federal agency, so I will inform them that they're done regulating anything in Wyoming and anything environmental that we need to look at to protect our environment. We'll use the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality. So the EPA will simply be gone.
And now, would you also extend that to other federal agencies like BLM and all of those sort of agencies?
Absolutely. BLM, Forest Service, Bureau Rec, Corps of Engineers, Park Service, etc. As a sovereign state, they have no constitutional authority to regulate, run, control anything in Wyoming. Their authority ends at federal buildings, forts, magazines, dockyards, and post roads. So that's where we're going to come down.
So, and you know, we talk a little bit about the, you know, how you would deal with, how you would deal with the federal end of things. Now, once you get to the governor's office in Cheyenne, what would you do differently than has been done in the past?
Well, one of the first things we will do during transition to get all of our people that we need on board, we're going to have a constitutional class for every elected sheriff, the president of every county commission, speaker of the House, and president of the Senate, and then all other elected officials who wish to attend. And the point of that is having everybody understand the oath we take and the authority that is afforded to you as an elected official under that oath. But also, because you take the oath, you're also liable if you don't uphold the oath. And I think that part's been left out. And so once we're all on the same page, then we can enforce the rules within Wyoming. Then the other thing you'll see is a real concerted effort to make regulations in our state for our business climate make sense. Right now we have some ridiculous regulations. I'll give you one example. A small rancher that I know in the Powder River Basin has gravel on his ranch. And he's able to sell that for driveways and flower beds and ornamental uses around the region there. Now, mind you, he has no employees. It's just him, kind of a one-man band. The EPA shut him down because there wasn't a porta potty at his gravel pit. Well, now, what kind of sense does that make? I mean, he's on a ranch. There's cattle, sheep, antelope, deer, etc., and none of those have porta potties. And since he doesn't have employees, facilities for employees don't come into play. So it's regulations like that that are stifling jobs, because there's a large producer in the Powder River Basin who spent over $400,000 trying to permit a gravel pit and finally gave up, sold his equipment, got out of the business. And so how many jobs did that kill? So it's the ridiculous regulations that I'm going to deal with forthwith and streamline that so that our economy can further be improved by the private sector, by people who know how to run their businesses. They will create jobs, and our economy will flourish. So those are things that people will see right away.
Well, and I know we talked about some of these things the last time you were in, and of course, if anybody has any questions for Dr. Haynes, 682-1270, 682-1270. One of the things that I wanted to get to last time, and we might have touched on it at the very end, but we didn't really get a whole lot of chance to talk about education. And I know this is one of your top priorities. As governor, what would you do to improve the education system here in Wyoming?
Okay, thank you. And you're right, it is one of my top priorities. Now, you understand, I will work with whoever the elected superintendent of public instruction is. But based on the amount of education I have and the amount of experience I have in being taught, I have some ideas to what we'd like to see in teachers. And I want to we'll get rid of Common Core the first day, because it was brought into the state by Governor Friedenthal and Superintendent McBride. Then Governor Haynes can just get rid of that. And then we'll backfill that federal money with state money into our schools so there's no chaos. But I want to free our teachers up to teach the full depth of subject matter, not just teach to some tests. I want to get rid of standardized testing in the elementary schools from the outside. I'll have our teachers in every subject matter across the state and across the curriculum. Those teachers will develop the tests that say, here's what the students should know at the beginning of the year, here's what they know at the end of the year, or maybe at midterm. But I'll have the teachers working within their various buildings and within their organization to restructure education to what we used to call classical education, where you learn the full depth of the subject matter and you're not just being taught to the test. And the teachers will be in the classroom with the children and the aides, and they won't be filling out reams of forms and paperwork and so forth. So that's what I want to do with education in the K through 12 level. Now, there's a real problem in Wyoming that I experienced when I was chairman of school board when we had a Catholic school in Cheyenne. Had a very difficult time hiring certified high school science teachers who could teach high school physics and math teachers who could teach math through calculus. Now, our community colleges have some of those resources already, and they already have two programs where they work with the high schools, one concurrent track, the other dual track. I want to make those programs much more robust with personnel and funds so they can put those programs that are lacking into all of our high schools, because through their outreach and their branches, community colleges touch every community now. So that would be a real short-term way to shore those subject matters up. Now, the other thing that's woefully lacking, not only in Wyoming, but across the republic, across the country, is vocational education. We have people that are gifted to touch and learn with their hands, who have what we used to call mechanical aptitude, who can look at a device and see how it works and also figure out how it could work better. I want a more robust vocational education offering for our high schools. And I would also use the community colleges to facilitate and enhance that program. So that's kind of the big picture of what I have in mind for education in Wyoming.
Well, and in there you mentioned science teachers, and I kind of wanted to ask you a question about the next generation science standards, and the state's been pretty hesitant to adopt these standards because of the content of the standards that that coal burning power plants are responsible for global climate change. Would you also stand against those next generation science standards?
100% against them, because they're not science standards as we understand science. They're political science and propaganda. CO2 is put out by coal-fired power plants and is put out by every person breathing in oxygen and exhaling. CO2 is not a pollutant. CO2 is required for green growing plants to use CO2 in photosynthesis to produce their fruit, which keeps us alive. And the byproduct of their photosynthesis is oxygen. So I am 100% against that, and I'm for teaching our children how the planet works, how plants work, and not spending money trying to prove that CO2 is a pollutant or trying to deal with CO2 as a pollutant. That's just ridiculous, and it's coming from the Fed, it's coming from the UN, and we can just tell those folks to go somewhere else with that. We're not going to do that in Wyoming.
Well, and for those that aren't familiar, you're a medical doctor, so I would think you know what you're talking about when you talk about CO2 and how all living things produce CO2.
Right. Well, of course I do, and it's never mentioned. For instance, that CO2 is like 0.3% of atmospheric gases. So we're being ridiculous when we start to call that a greenhouse gas. The true greenhouse gas on the planet is water vapor in the form of cloud. We've all seen how a cloudy day or a clear day has an opposite and very dramatic effect on the temperature. And so the reason they chose CO2 is because you can measure carbon, and then they can tax it, they can control our lives, they can choke off our economy, make more people dependent on the government. Well, Wyoming will lead the nation. When I'm governor, we will lead the nation in economy, we will lead the nation in math and science for our children, and we'll lead the nation back to common sense and prosperity. And we can do all of that from the boardroom with me as governor.
Well, and since you mentioned prosperity, I kind of wanted to just touch back on the economy and jobs. I mean, we talked about the energy industry, but what else would you do, aside from helping out the energy industry, what else would you do to promote the growth of the economy and jobs in the state?
Well, a couple of more things on the natural resource side. When we take over managing all our forests, we will have a much more robust forest products industry. Right now, we still have an opportunity for those specialized producers to use that beetle kill for ornamental lumber products, and we will make that available. We will go back to multiple use. There will be fire service roads, there will be logging roads, and the people will have access to 100% of our forests, and they will become healthy again over time. Now, the other thing that the state is already doing that I want to enhance and see to its completion is I want a very complete and robust IT backbone. In other words, the major fiber between our cities and between Wyoming and the rest of the republic. I think that is as essential as road and bridge, and I want to really continue to push that to its completion and not in a piecemeal fashion. By doing that, then we will have the availability for other types of industry. We've seen a bit of that in Cheyenne area where the IT backbone and the computing backbone has been really enhanced by the supercomputer and the fiber necessary to service that. Other companies are moving in. But I've also seen in places like Pinedale, small information technology-based companies providing other services. And so those kinds of things will be possible if we complete our IT backbone. I am at this time in conversation with, of course, in confidence with other types of manufacturing, with arms manufacturing and ammunition manufacturing. And so I'm looking at other areas that we can use our excellent workforce and we can use our wide open space and our excellent tax climate to attract industry. And as governor, I will also work with governors and mayors in the major metropolitan areas so they realize that mine producers here in Wyoming can guarantee them cheap, low-cost energy. And then they can reattract manufacturing. Therefore, we can help the economy of the country and Wyoming. But to diversify our economy, we never want to think we're going to get away from our natural resource base because all new wealth comes from the earth. All new wealth comes out of the ground. Everything that happens to whatever comes out of the ground is value added. And we are very, very rich in natural resources. So we need that industry to be healthy. And then the value added industries, the add-on industries can follow suit.
Well, and one thing that I've noticed, and I've heard this from several people, that the stronger the mineral and the energy industries are, the stronger all of the other industries are as well. So it all kind of has a symbiotic relationship.
Right. Every product you can think of started somewhere in the earth, like whether it's a plastic, an electronic component, or what have you. Once you have that rich base in its proper perspective, then the other industries can flourish. Now, because of this IT backbone that I'm talking about, people that worked, for instance, when I was in medicine, we had a few people in my practice who actually had, for instance, architectural firms in New York or in San Francisco. And they worked mostly from their home in southeastern Wyoming. With a robust IT backbone, we can have more of those types of things. We can have engineering and architectural firms in Wyoming employing our people. Sure, providing that service in Wyoming, but providing it worldwide from Wyoming and still maintaining our small population base. So it's those things, opportunity favors a prepared mind. So by improving the IT backbone, improving our community college system, and I want to elevate that community college system so that it provides some competition for the University of Wyoming. By doing that, we have the most ready, robust workforce, the best educated workforce possible, equal to anywhere in the world, and then that will increase entrepreneurship, new ideas, new manufacturing. And so you have to bring all of these things along.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that you mentioned a few minutes ago was bringing in some of the ammunition and firearms manufacturing, and that brings me to the next question I wanted to ask you. And this is a topic that's probably the one that's at the top of my list. Everyone has a list of topics that they hot button issues that they really are passionate about, and the Second Amendment is that one for me. What would you do to protect the Second Amendment as governor?
Well, and that's a very easy question, and it's near and dear to my heart as well. Basically, as governor, you state, you reiterate, and as part of my inaugural address, some of these things will be there just so people know. The Second Amendment, as it is written, is all of the authority and individual needs to keep and bear arms. And so as governor, I will make certain that if the legislature wants to pass legislation to strengthen the Second Amendment somehow, I'm all for that. And obviously we would oppose any legislation that would weaken in any way the Second Amendment. Now, every time the president or even Congress or the UN makes a verbal assault on the Second Amendment, I think the governor, and as governor, what I will do is issue just a press release pointing out to our people that doesn't apply in Wyoming. He has no authority as the executive for the United States to make any rule that affects Wyoming, and actually neither does the Congress. And so just to reassure our people that they don't have to worry that somebody's going to show up to take their gun or that there's some gun that they can't own. There's no such thing as that under the Second Amendment. And a simple statement like that issued by the governor from time to time, whenever these trial balloons, which is what they are floated from the beltway, if you will, I think that reassures our people, and we don't waste time and effort worrying about things that don't apply to us.
And I will say, I mean, coming from back east where things weren't quite as friendly to the Second Amendment, Wyoming does a pretty good job. So I guess it's safe to say that you would keep constitutional carry as it is, right?
I would keep constitutional carry as it is, and it is now that you don't need a permit in Wyoming, and the only reason we tolerate any sort of rules about carry is to maintain reciprocity with the other states who don't have our understanding of the Second Amendment and who really, for whatever reasons, have restrictions. And so we put those sort of in the background so that our people can maintain reciprocity so they can travel outside the state of Wyoming and carry their firearm without being harassed.
And I will say, I mean, there are very few restrictions, so I think Wyoming's doing a pretty good job. But I like the idea of publicly rebuking the federal government when they try to when they do float those, as you said, trial balloons.
Well, I think it's very important because as I travel around, whenever that's happened, that's one of the first questions. Well, what about this UN gun treaty? What about Barbara Boxer's bill to ban 120 guns? What about so-and-so's statement that maybe citizens shouldn't have 50-round magazines? Well, you just, as governor, you say, well, that's all talk, and it's their opinion. The Second Amendment says your right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and there's no codas, asterisks, footnotes by which it can be infringed, so you just remind the people, don't worry about that. It doesn't affect us in Wyoming. And if anyone tries to enforce any of these restrictions on the Second Amendment, then the governor, the county sheriffs, etc., will be there to protect you from such.
I like the sound of that. We only have a couple of minutes left. Do you have any events coming up that you'd like to talk about?
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I will be at the KIML County Library tonight from 6 to 8:30, and it's time to meet and greet, and we're going to try and raise a little money there. And so I'd like everybody to come out and see it.
And I will say, if anybody hasn't met Dr. Haynes, he's a great speaker, so definitely go out to the library tonight.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, Dr. Taylor Haynes, HaynesForGovernor.com is the website. Tonight from 6 to 8:30 at Campbell County Library. Thanks for giving us a call, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you again sometime soon.
Well, thank you very much, and God be with us all.
Thank you, thank you. There you go, Dr. Taylor Haynes, HaynesForGovernor.com. And with that, we're going to take a short break, and we'll come back and we'll have our next guest. News Talk 1270, KIML.
For interviews, host blogs, and more, check out Basin Radio Network on Facebook. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270, KIML. IML.